Good morning, and thanks for tuning in to episode 14 of the What's Your 20 podcast. I'm your host, EPD Special Projects Coordinator Taylor Maris, and joining me this week is retired Police Chief of Evansville, current Police Chief of Henderson Police Department, Billy Bolin. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I thought we could just bring you in and talk about your time on EPD, and then also looking forward, what your goals for Henderson are, because I'm sure there are people that listen to this podcast that live in Henderson. So if you just want to start talking about your time on EPD and kind of where you started and where you ended, that'd be a great start, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess let me first hit, I actually started my law enforcement career in Henderson.
That's right.
Back in 1995.
Yep.
And then in 98, I came over here to Evansville, which is where I'm born and raised. This is my home. Being the chief of the Evansville Police Department is probably going to be my, looking back on my professional career, the highlight of my career. And I don't mean that as a knock on Henderson at all, because I'm loving it. I love the community. I love the job. But this was my home. It's where I was born and raised. And I loved every minute of being the chief over here. So it's something I can look back on with pride that I had this. And now I get to go back and finish where I started. And hopefully this will be my last step is over in Henderson. So it's been a pretty neat ride so far.
And that wasn't the plan for you either.
Not
when
at
you
all.
left Evansville.
I would have bet anybody that I was never going back into policing. I didn't plan on being a chief. I'm sure you and I are pretty close. My close friends, my family, I told them I didn't want to be a police chief anymore. I didn't want to be a police officer. I didn't want to be in leadership. I thought I was going to go into, I don't know, selling body cameras or
down in Florida.
Where I was going to travel and be a former police chief doing something affiliated, but not as a sworn officer. And if any other agency would have asked me to be their chief or had an opening, I would have had zero interest. And just the fact that it's where I started, I was like, man, it'd be kind of neat to go back and finish where it all began. And I immediately, when the opportunity came up, said I'm interested in this and started pursuing it. And I thank God I did. And the other thing that you're aware of is Chief Smith and I are really good friends. He's one of my best friends.
Right.
And I wanted him to be my successor, and that was my goal for years. Never did I dream that we were going to get to do the jobs together.
Yeah.
I thought I'd be calling him from the road in a hotel asking about things. And so to get to be the chief across the bridge to where I've had to call him and ask for help already since I've been over there.
Yeah.
Evansville sent their Bearcat over to help in Henderson. We've let the Evansville SWAT team train at our school building over in Henderson. So it's been neat, the things that we're able to do across the bridge and through the cities, but never did I see that as a possibility. Yeah. And it's really cool.
Well, and I saw a picture, too, from this week of a lot of you in administration around the area having lunch together. Who all was a part of that lunch meeting, or what did you guys discuss in that lunch meeting?
So first, back up a little bit. I started doing this when I first got to Henderson because I thought over my time, I tried to build relationships across the bridge with Henderson, and we had good relations. But I thought this gives us a unique opportunity to really expand on that with Phil and I being so close. So I reached out to the Henderson Sheriff, Vanderburgh County Sheriff, and Phil and said, what if we started doing like a quarterly lunch with us and our assistants, and to where we all get to know each other, and where I know most of these people pretty well, but all of our other people didn't. So we started doing that. And then this month, Phil had ran into Sheriff Latham from Posey County and invited him, and I can see this growing to where we end up including more people as it goes, but it's more just a get to know each other, hang out. But we did have conversations about things going on and recruitment and things we can jointly do or help each other. And like Sheriff Robinson and I were talking about Phil letting the EPD use our school that we have over there. So we have a old school building that the police department runs. It's a training center over there. So we can, do active shooter training anytime we want. We don't have to work on a school schedule or do something. So it's something him and I were talking about if they ever want to use it.
Right.
I know the EPD SWAT guys really love it. And Sergeant Will that runs it said, I wish we had a spot that we could do this full time or have anytime we wanted. And I said, you do. Anytime you want to come over here, you can use it. So those type of things that can now happen because we have relationships. And I think the more we build those, more people we include. Once you get to know people, it's a little bit easier to pick up the phone and call and ask for something or ask for assistance. So that's what the goal of it is.
Yeah. So talk about managing. You went from at max 289 officers to what do you have in Henderson?
So we're authorized for 59 right now. We have 54.
Okay.
So we're hoping to get more. If anybody's listening, we're hiring.
Hey, now you're on our podcast.
Yeah, Phil and I bicker back and forth all the time on this. So at one of these lunches in Henderson, we had a former Henderson officer that's with another agency that's looking to come back, and he happened to be in the restaurant we were. And so me and my assistant chief were talking to him. And when Phil and Noah figured out what was going on, they start yelling down the table how much they pay. I said, you guys can go back to Evansville.
Yeah.
So
no kidding.
It's all in good time.
It is.
But we all are competing with each other right now to get bodies because it's tough. But as I said earlier, I think the Evansville Police Department would be a phenomenal place to work. And I think Henderson's a great place to work. But I just lost what you were asking me. I got sidetracked. Do you remember
the difference between managing a larger amount of officers at Evansville versus Henderson?
It's pretty much the same thing. It's the same structure over there. They're still considered a pretty big department. So,
really,
at 50-something officers.
Okay.
I mean, you think of most police agencies. Like I was very involved with the state association here in Indiana. Most police departments are 10 or under. They're pretty small departments.
Okay.
So you get into the 50-plus size, you may have 20 in a state that are 50 and bigger. And
wow. I guess I never realized that.
Yeah, when you think about it from that.
Okay.
So Evansville's definitely larger.
Right.
And than Henderson, a whole lot larger. But we're still like the largest in our area in Kentucky for a little bit. And so the structure's the same, but it's a whole lot less of everything. My emails, I don't get nearly the amount that I did here. The amount of calls in my evenings, the updates that I get on crime, I get updated on things that here in Evansville I wouldn't have, because there's so much going on here just because of the size of the city that I didn't get notified when we had an accident with injury. I didn't get notified when we had a shots fired. If somebody got shot, I was notified. If somebody was killed in an accident, we're in Henderson, those are the things I'm getting notified on because we're not having as much, which for me, my stress level has dropped dramatically. My wife talks about how I'm not on my phone all the time.
I was going to say, I'm
here.
sure your family appreciates that.
They do. And the fact that Phil and I are so close, we talk daily.
Right. And
hearing what he's dealing with, I mean, there's times that I will catch myself with my hand on my head, rubbing my head, and then I think this is not my problem. I don't have to worry about this. And then like a couple of weeks ago, Phil called and he was telling me about something he was dealing with. He was pretty upset. I got pretty amped up about it. And my wife's like, why are you getting mad about it? It's not, and I'm like, well, but Phil's my buddy. And so there is a lot more stress with the EPD job than there is in Henderson. So that change has been really good for me. And at this point in my life, I'm loving that.
Well, and I'm sure too, you're ingrained almost to like still react to what's happening at EPD because it was such a part of your life for so long and you were the chief for so long. So when you hear those things from Phil, I'm sure your natural instinct is to react just because you dealt with it for so long.
It is. And I think EPD is always going to be a part of my life. I think if I live to be 90, I'm going to feel attached to EPD. I mean, it's where I spent most of my career. I love this department. I care about it. I care about the people. So I'm always going to have that attachment. The one thing that, Chief Hill was before me that kind of taught me, and I think he was a great example that you will never hear me criticize a future chief. And Phil and I agree on almost everything, so I don't have anything to criticize him. But even if it was a chief I didn't like, I'm never going to come because only that chief knows what they're dealing with. And most officers have an idea what they would do or they think, and everybody's got an opinion. I had opinions. But after sitting in that spot and knowing the stress that comes with it, I'm here to support Phil Smith. I'm not here to criticize him.
Absolutely.
But that being said, truthfully, I don't have anything I would criticize.
Yeah.
But if there ever is something that he does different than I would, nobody's ever going to know that because I'm here to support him. That's what you should do as the former chief.
100%. Well, and I was taking notes yesterday about talking points. I'm like, we don't need talking points. We're just going to have a conversation. But one of the things that I was listing out is the different nonprofits that you started in Evansville while you were on the police department. So talking about Mickey's Kingdom, 911 Gives Hope, helping out with Cops Connecting with Kids at the start of it. And, these things, they're transitioning as well into Henderson. Henderson is a part of Cops Connecting with Kids. We have boxers that are from Henderson and the 911 Gives Hope boxing event. And so talking about that, do you have any future endeavors for nonprofits or continuing nonprofit work?
Yes. But first, let me hit on that. The one thing that has been really cool for me in Henderson is seeing a lot of the things we started over here, they are doing there and they've been doing for years. And what I've learned is it's all originated over there at a grassroots level. So over here, it was in the Chiefs complex. We're coming up with ideas, trying to push things out. Over in Henderson, it was the officers themselves that watched what we were doing. Yeah. They liked it, and they started doing it. So I'm trying to take on a different role over there of, even though I may have started one of these, I don't want to step on their toes and hurt what they've already been doing. Mm-hmm. So I've made it clear to them that I want to help you guys, but you keep doing what you're doing.
That's amazing.
And I'm going to stand on the sideline.
Yeah.
The one thing over there, like moving forward, they have done all the paperwork. They've started a Henderson Police Foundation, kind of like the EPD Foundation.
Oh, I love it.
But it's been sitting dormant. They've done nothing with it. So for a couple years now, they've had everything ready to go. Mm-hmm. They have a board, but there's no money in account, no nothing there. So I do want to start raising funds and start using our foundation. Yeah. And like one of my top things I would like to do over there is, we don't have a real SWAT vehicle like a Bearcat, like Evansville and Vanderburgh County do. So hopefully the foundation will be able to raise some funds and get our own Bearcat. So that's going to be my first thing I want to really start working on and roll out over there. But those are the things that I'm probably proudest of in my professional life, is the Kids Kingdom, Mickey's Kingdom, 911 Gives Hope, Cops Connecting with Kids, all those things I was able to be a part of. Mm-hmm. Jason Cullum came to work for me over there. He's the one that started Cops Connecting with Kids, but Phil and I were along for the ride with him and helped with that.
Yeah, from day one.
Yeah, so it's been neat being a part of those things and seeing the difference you can make. And I know one of the kids that went with me years ago is working at the sheriff's office, but I know that one of the kids that went with us in middle school, he graduated from UE, is actually going through the EPD process, and Phil told me he passed his polygraph here in the past week. So that's going to be neat to see the first Evansville police officer that went on the trip with us when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, he's far from a kid. If you know Jason Cullum, he's pretty tall, and Lucius makes Jason look little, and he's nothing but muscle. So it's going to be neat seeing him wear a uniform.
Well, and there are a lot of people, too, that don't see the need or see why officers and teachers are taking students to Disney. But I can say from my own experience, the very first trip I went on 4 years ago, I was chaperoning a girl named Kalia, and I just love watching her turn into the young woman she has. And you've seen it on Facebook, too. She's received 6 different college offers, one to the University of Kentucky, go Wildcats, but also she applied to the culinary school in New York. And she really just applied out on a whim. She didn't think she would receive an acceptance letter, and she did. And so just kind of not necessarily mentoring, but just having a relationship with these kids as they grow into young adults is amazing to see and be a part of, too.
It's very important. And I've only been to the Fall Festival just a little bit this week, since I don't have the role of being there as much. But I've actually ran into Kalia at the Fall Festival this week. And I asked her if she knew where she was going to go, and she told me she thinks she's going to go to the one in New York. She's pretty excited about it. So
that's what she said. I know she was really interested in going to Charleston because her aunt lives down there. But I think it kind of surprised her that she got accepted into New York, and so I couldn't be prouder of her.
So have you connected her with your sister at all?
Not yet. No.
Well, if you don't know, Taylor's sister is a pretty big deal in the food industry as well.
She is. She's a James Beard nominee. And so up in Indianapolis, she's pretty known for her culinary skills.
Maybe Kalia will be working for your sister someday.
Maybe.
That could be a pretty full circle
I know
moment.
Kalia likes the bakery side of things, though.
And she told me that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But outside of that, you had mentioned kind of Henderson taking things from EPD, and that's what we do in the police world. We take things from different agencies, which is going to lead me into an upcoming trip that we have, a conference we're going to in Boston, the International Association Chiefs of Police Conference, where there's 17,000 officers from across the countries.
Huge conference.
Yeah, and we're going to be presenting at it. But I don't know if you want to talk about how many years you guys have actually been presenters at this conference, because it goes way before me.
I think it started in 2019. Jason Cullum and Phil Smith were asked to teach. It wasn't Las Vegas, but it was like a suburb of Las Vegas. Henderson, yeah, Nevada. It's amazing that's the name. But they taught a class out there, and then later that year, Phil, Jason, and I taught at the International Conference in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Then you were involved, and we taught in Dallas. We were supposed to teach in New Orleans, and it got canceled for COVID, and then again for hurricanes. Mm-hmm. But now going to Boston, and we put it. And I think last year we didn't submit to teach, but you got asked, and you were on a panel discussion.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and where was last year?
San Diego.
In San Diego.
Yeah.
So EPD's been involved since 2019 on the national scale teaching, and then we hosted the PIO conference here in Evansville, which was another really cool thing to see public information officers from literally all over the country, Hawaii, Washington, D.C., Canada,
Florida,
I think, Florida, from all over came to Evansville
and
to
they
learn
loved
about
it.
how to do things.
And
so
they loved Evansville, Indiana.
Yes, and we rolled out the red carpet.
We did. We had to.
My favorite was Alana from Hawaii. How much, and she wasn't just saying it to us, she loved Evansville. And I'm like, I want to go to Hawaii.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat. And she has already reached out. I think it was a group text that you were on that she's going to Boston. So we're going to see her there. But it's kind of neat, the relationships we've been able to form in the profession. And I look forward, Taylor didn't mention who, but we're co-presenting. It's Taylor, me, Chief Smith, and Sheriff Robinson will be teaching together a class. And it's about community policing, outreach, use of social media, and I think it'll be really fun teaching with all you.
It will be. And what's interesting to me is that, sometimes people see our social media, and like I said, with the Disney trip, some people don't understand why we do some of the things that we do. And that's understandable if you're not exposed to it. But whenever we go to these conferences, people really look to us to see what we're doing. It's almost as if we're ahead of the trends. Some of the classes that we attend, they're things that we've been doing. And I think that says a lot about our agency in Henderson as well, and Vanderburgh County Sheriff's Office, that we're trendsetters in a sense.
Yeah, it's been pretty neat to be a part of. And there's other people out there that we soaked up a lot from. You know him, but Mark Economu was in Boca Raton, Florida. I really liked a lot of what he did early on. And there's numerous other ones, Hawthorne, California, we stole a lot of stuff from them. So it's just looking at other people, seeing what we can do. Some of it we've created on our own, but it's being able to not have that big ego and feel like you got to make something your own, but looking and seeing, I'm Chris Pugh, that used to be our assistant chief, saw something on social media from, I think it was California somewhere, about pets being adopted and the police officers posing with them. And he's like, why don't we start doing that here? Well, now, as you know, you're the one that organizes it. Every week we've got something with either a Vanderburgh County deputy or EPD officer posing with an animal that's up for adoption. Henderson does similar thing, and I think they probably started doing it after Chris started doing it here. So you can look at other agencies and not reinvent the wheel, but what can we do to connect with our community? And everything that's happened in our profession in the past 10 years or so, we have to try to build those connections more so 100%. Than ever. And back to what you said earlier about people don't understand sometimes, one of my favorite things about the Fall Festival is how many kids we run into that are now young adults that know us from the trip, and they love our department. They feel associated. And it goes back years ago. People went to the FOP POW camp during the summer, and we still do those camps. But I've had grown adults older than me that tell me their first good impression of police officers was from going to that camp when they were a kid, or being a crossing guard and doing the crossing guard camp. So those things are important. And when you connect with somebody at a young age, you build that connection for a lifetime.
And I think that's why I take so much pride in my position on the department, is just building those relationships, especially at, a young age between 5 and 12, because that's when they're the most impressionable. I started the summer reading series this summer, and at Barnes & Noble, there was a little boy writer that came to every single one. And so at the end of it, I bought him a book and signed it and said, continue to read. Well, since then, we've formed a relationship, his mother and I, and they've been to National Night Out. They've come to Coffee with a Cop, all from just reading over the summer. And it's simple things like that if you're making an impact on one person's life, that's going to impact their families as well. And so that's my big goal.
And I know as a parent, I've got 3 boys. If you do something for one of my kids or win them over, you've won me over.
Absolutely.
And I think that is, and what we've seen from the cops connecting with kids, there's been a lot of kids that went on this trip that grew up in homes where their family don't like nor trust the police. And we've seen that change.
Yeah.
We broke down those, when they come home and they talk about how much fun they have with Miss Taylor or Mr. Billy or Mr. Phil or Mr. Jason, the parents start seeing us as not that police officer that's locking people up,
right,
but a human being that actually cared about their kid and made a fun time for them. And a lot of these kids will say it was the best week of their life.
Yeah.
And it's not a theory now. We've seen it happen.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably the coolest public relations thing I've been involved with, because it truly does change lives.
It does. And even when we're down there at Disney, there's a lot of people that ask about the organization. And there have been numerous times you guys have been asked about, well, how can we start this at our own agency? But I think Cops Connecting with Kids, I think it's the only one. I mean, I've never heard of any other agencies that do anything like this.
I haven't either, and I think we are. And David Montero works at the Vanderbilt County Jail now. He's been there for over a year. He went with us on this trip when he was in middle school. Got out of high school. He didn't think college was his route. But what I remember him on the trip, he would FaceTime his mom, his dad, his siblings, and he would speak all Spanish to them. And then when we got off the bus, he wanted to introduce me as to his mom, and his mom didn't speak English. And then when he graduated middle school, they had a big party for him, and my wife and I went, and the whole family, none of them did.
Yeah.
Being in law enforcement was not on his radar, and he's now wanting to be a sheriff's deputy, and he works full-time as a confinement officer because he went with us to Disney. So, and what I've learned from him, we were just talking last week, and he was actually on vacation in Mexico texting with me. And he loves that so many of the jailers call him to translate because our Latino population is really growing.
Yeah.
And they need somebody like him that can translate. So he's found a niche, and it's really a good need. And when I talk to deputies, they know who he is because they've utilized him a lot. So it's neat seeing that this kid's doing this because, you know, Jason Cullum had an idea years ago to take kids to Disney, and it's really helping our profession where now we're all competing with each other. We're getting a new group of people that are interested because of this trip.
Right. Yeah, and it's I know the Disney, I just got the dates for the Disney reveals, and that's always fun to see too, the different schools whenever they make the selection. I was working church last night, and there was a young woman that goes to the school. I usually go with Lodge. I'm a chaperone for Lodge, and one of my previous Disney students goes to the same church I go to, and her friend said, I don't know if I'm going to get picked for Disney. And it was heartbreaking to hear because these kids, you know, they want to go and they have friends that go and they work really, really hard. And she's like, I've been crunching the numbers, and I mean, it's a possibility, but so kids look forward to this, and it's not just a reward, but building relationships it means something.
Yeah. And we've tried really hard. Most of us, I saw Crystal Thomas, one of the officers that goes, she made a post this week where some of her kids that have went with her on prior trips are volunteering with her in the FOP booth at the Fall Festival this week.
Yep.
So it's more than a trip at Disney World for a week. We are trying to build lifelong relationships and connect. And that's the biggest thing I try to stress to people, that one of the criticisms I've heard over the years is, well, can't you just take them to Holiday World for a day? I mean, this is kind of extreme. You don't build a relationship in a one-day thing at Holiday World.
No.
But when you're on a plane with them and they're nervous about going on that plane and you're walking them through it and helping them, and I've seen you holding hands with one of your girls on the plane. We're trying to get these kids over that hump. Then we get down there and we ride the rides with them, and
we're just normal people.
Yeah, and we've all seen it. Every one of us adults that go that first day or two, you're just kind of the popo or the police, or they don't really know you. By the end of that trip, they're hugging you, they're asking to ride with you. You have broke down a barrier, and it takes that week of doing that. And that's, until people go, they don't get it. Darren Harmon, lifelong sheriff deputy, retired, works for the Vanderbilt County Prosecutor's Office. He went for the first time last year. And Darren will say that. He's like, I had no idea what this trip meant until seeing it, and now I get it. And we need to get more officers involved or take that chance. And it's a lot to go on that trip. I remember my very first one, back then we took buses. Now we fly.
Thank goodness.
We were barely out of Henderson, and Jason Cullum was sitting across from me, and this kid kept kicking me in the back. And I know his name. I won't say it on here. We still talk, me and this kid. But I look at Jason. I'd ask him several times. I'm like, hey, bud, can you quit kicking the chair? And look at Jason. I'm like, I've made a mistake. And I'm texting my wife, and I'm like, this is the biggest mistake of my life. I can't believe I'm doing this. And it was a long, long trip to Florida with all those kids in that bus. And we've got horror stories we can tell of what happened on there. But looking back, I'm so glad we did it. And it has been life-changing for me and most of the adults as well.
Absolutely. Well, and Jason Cullum's in the room with us, so I'm going to throw out this little shameless plug for a fundraiser we have coming up. It's actually the day we get back from Boston. So what is that, the 23rd or the 24th? 23rd. October 23rd. You can sign up to play bingo. And this is a fundraiser for Cops Connecting with Kids. And this is a program that's completely funded by the community. The students, the teachers don't pay for park tickets, plane flight. And so all of this is given to us by the community's funds.
Yes.
And so we have to do these fundraisers. And so bingo is coming up. And this is the first time we're doing bingo. So we're really excited. There's $9,000 total payout, so a lot of money you could win. You can sign up on Eventbrite, but if you want to go to the Cops Connecting with Kids Facebook page, there's plenty of information there, a link you can sign up, and this can help if you want to help support, send kids to Disney with us. That's a great way to do it. I don't know if you have anything else you would like to add to that.
Now, I think it will be really exciting. People that are into bingo, they love these big ones.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be out at the Burdette Park. What's the name of the Discovery Lodge.
Yep.
So it's a big facility, and I think it'll be really exciting that night if it's full with people trying to win. We've got sponsors for most of the bigger bingos now, and we'll have the whole thing by then. But there's going to be quite a few big pots that people can win, and so go out, have fun, and you're helping something.
Yeah,
so you're not really losing. Whatever you lose that night, it's going to help a good cause.
And tickets are relatively cheap. What, $35 a ticket? How much is a table? $320 for a table. And think about, you could win $9,000. So really, you could win your money back plus more. So yeah, think about that. If you want to come out, it's on a Wednesday night. So most people's Wednesday nights are pretty free.
I think Chief Smith is one of the MCs, so you can help us heckle him.
That's easy to do. Easy to do. So yeah, looking forward to that. And I just want to thank you for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Is there anything else you want to add about Henderson, EPD, anything?
No, I think you covered it, but I'm proud of you. I'm proud of this podcast. I think is a great tool, and we talk about you a lot. And you're one of the things that I look back on, and I'm so glad to see you doing everything you're doing. I know Chief Smith's proud of you too, so keep it up.
Thank you for taking a chance on me, because we didn't know each other.
No, not at all.
We've had maybe one or two conversations.
And as Chief Smith has reminded me numerous times, you were his pick. He wanted you for this, and he tells me all the time, but he was right. I hate admitting he's right, but you've done a really good job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for tuning in to the What's Your 20 podcast. You can tune in again on October 26th to hear from Sergeant Anthony Ossaker. Make sure to subscribe and follow our Spotify and YouTube accounts to stay up to date on all podcast releases. Have a good weekend.